more nations are preparing their troops to join the Kenyans in Haiti. And these nations include the gangs only have two options, either to surrender or fight, of which if they choose to fight, they are going to be overpowered by the MSS forces that are building up. They are still far away from being the full number of 2,500, and yet the gangs are already asking for a truce between government and the gangs themselves. So the information that we have is that these contingents that have said that they will join the Kenyan forces have said that they are in the planning phase, and within 1 month they will deploy their first or advanced team. While more nations are sending their troops to Haiti, this is just coming days after the visit by the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Haiti and had a meeting with the police commander Godfrey Otunge to discuss about the future of Haiti. The Secretary of State commended the forces that are there in Haiti. Currently now, only Kenyan forces have deployed in Haiti, but news is just coming in that more nations are preparing their troops to join the Kenyans in Haiti. And these nations include Bahamas, Belize, and Jamaica. Bahamas, Belize, and Jamaica, all these are Caribbean countries. They are neighboring Haiti, and they are part of the nations that had promised to send their forces to Haiti to battle the gangs and ensure that Haiti goes through a democratic process to elect new leaders. You should know that Haiti has not had elections since the death of President Jovenel Moise. And even before the death of President Jovenel Moise, there were talks about the fact that Jovenel Moise had overstayed in power. And that is part of the reason as to why the opposition were not with the government of the day and opposed the government of the day, saying that the term had already ended and that Jovenel Moise was ruling by decree. So this is just coming days after the visit of the Secretary of State, and that means that there were some agreements that were made during the visit of the Secretary of State. Of course, they had gone to assess the progress of the Kenyans who are in Haiti and what they've done so far, according to the agreement that all nations had in taking down the gangs and ensuring that there is a seamless process of having credible elections so that Haiti can have new leaders, new representative for the country. This will boost international support because right now, as things are, it is only a Kenyan affair. If any place, anywhere, there's a discussion about Haiti, about the gangs in Haiti, people will just say it is Kenya that is in Haiti and Kenya is battling the gangs in Haiti. Well, additional forces from different countries will now bring up the community perspective to make this entire mission to be an international community, international resolve mission, other than a Kenyan mission versus Haiti. This was not supposed to be a Kenyan versus Haiti. This was a UN declaration that was signed. Although this is not a UN mission, this is a UN-backed mission. It is supported by the UN, was assented by the UN, and has the support of all nations across the world that this mission has to go on, that Kenya should take leadership of the mission, but other countries will have contributed to the restoration of Haiti and disabling the gangs from terrorizing the citizens of Haiti. Well, the head of the police forces, the MSS forces in Haiti, Godfrey Otunge, was very happy about the developing story that Bahamas, Jamaica, and Belize are going to deploy in Haiti, and specifically said that it is going to work for a broader international commitment. A broader international commitment in the sense that the Haitian mission was supposed to be an international mission, and so far Kenya was the only country that had deployed, and that will work to the favor of the MSS forces and the fact that even Haitians themselves will start seeing that it is not just a Kenyan affair, that it is an international affair, and that will earn more trust from the Haitian people to the MSS forces. Also, he talked about the challenges that the MSS forces are facing in Haiti, and specifically he mentioned about the difficulty of defending areas that have been reclaimed from gang influence. So once they go to a particular area and reclaim that portion to the general public, they are finding it a bit hard to defend those regions from being claimed again by the gangs. So he said that as a measure to counter that challenge, they are going to start opening up FOBs. FOBs are forward operating bases, to make sure that in an area that they have reclaimed, they set a base there so that they can defend that area from being claimed again by the gangs. And that is very, very important, coming from the police commander himself, showing his bravery, showing his resolve, as well as showing the confidence that the MSS is having right now, in that they have recently received some reinforcement in terms of supplies, armories, uh, vehicles, armored vehicles, as well as they've gotten the needful financial support to get through with the mission and see it to completion. So we know that the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, was in Haiti, and Antony Blinken was happy about the continuation of the MSS forces. And he particularly mentioned that there is a need to make it sustainable, because as we speak right now, not all funds have been delivered as agreed by the nations that were supposed to contribute financially for this mission. There is a need for nations like the US, Canada, and France to make sure that they live up to their support, so that the boots on the ground can work effectively and have all the supplies they need to fight the gangs. This is a unique mission. Is a mission that has not been done in Haiti, where the MSS forces is putting up all it can to make sure that they fight the gangs, not only through guns and bullets, as we have discussed here before. They are also doing it through having a conversation with the Haitian National Police, having a conversation with the population, so that they can repel the gangs from the ideological influence that they have toward the tactical influence that they have on the society. So the battle, as MSS understands it, the battle begins with the ideology, then progresses to the tactical, and that is part of what they are trying to do. As we saw the other day, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Kenyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, tried as much as possible also to be involved actively in this by setting up an event where they are going to showcase Kenyan and Haitian culture, to bring up a sense of Pan-Africanism, as well as to just show Haitians that we are together and there is no difference. There's no big difference between Haitians and Kenyans, and that we can all achieve what we need to achieve if we set weapons aside, if we set guns aside, and say, let us try to do this through democratically permitted means, or through the constitution, so that every differences within the country can be ironed out. Of course, the news that nations are pledging now to join the MSS, the Kenyan MSS forces in Haiti, is bad news to the gangs, and the gangs are already jittery about it. They feel as if now the entire world is coming at them, and it is bad news to them, because just recently we know that the gang leaders had tried to ask the MSS forces, including the Haitian National Police and the government, to come to a table so that they can agree on something. But that, as Gary Conil, the Prime Minister, went on air and said, that is not a possibility, that the gangs only have two options, either to surrender or fight, of which if they choose to fight, they are going to be overpowered by the MSS forces that are building up. Currently, only 400 Kenyans as part of the MSS forces are there. The bulk of the number of Kenyan forces that are supposed to be in Haiti has still not touched down in Haiti. So that means that they are still far away from being the full number of 2,500, and yet the gangs are already asking for a truce between the government and the gangs themselves. So it is coming as bad news to them, as well as we are looking at the chances that they have of winning this, which are very slim, because this, as I said earlier, it is not simply a UN mission. This is a UN-backed mission, but with very specific objectives. The objectives are not to only go there and stand in between the government or in between gangs. Let's say that this is a mission to do one thing, and that is to overpower and suppress gangs in Haiti, and make sure that the citizens of Haiti are free to mingle, they are free to go anywhere in the country, and they are free to do anything they wish and hold elections to have new leaders. So this is bad news to the gangs, as well as we'll be looking at what will happen thereafter. The information that we have is that these contingents that have said that they will join the Kenyan forces have said that they are in the planning phase, and within 1 month they will deploy their first or advanced team, just the same way Kenya deployed its advanced team of 400. They will also deploy their advanced team. So that means that, or that is a telltale sign that this mission is going to have an extension of time, because this 1 year mission was supposed to start last year, October, to this year, October. But right now, as we know, Kenyans have only been there for 2 months. So it means that there will be an extension of a few months so that they can reach their full number and they can articulate their roles as they are supposed to articulate their roles.